Okay, so what do you do once you've created a landing page and you've demonstrated that people are interested in it? Do you go ahead and pour in, 30 grand, 40 grand to build the app? Or do you, go ahead and spend 6 months or a year of your time and build the full blown version straight away? Probably not. I would say the next step after you've demonstrated interest in your product is actually building what's called a minimum viable product. And this comes from, the lean startup kind of methodology where you really don't assume anything about your users or about your buyers and let them guide you in your development cycles. So I'm going to bring back this example of Great Little Place, which is an app that allows you to discover essentially cool things to do in London. And I think it's user submitted with a little bit of curation as well. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because we saw earlier on how they collected emails through their landing page and gathered interest in this app, but they didn't go straight away jumping into building the app. Instead, what they did was spent, 5-10 minutes maybe building a Facebook page. And what they did was they used this to validate the concept even further. So by having a page called I Know This is a Great Little Place in London, they publish posts on discoveries or places, let other people, the community, join and publish their own little tidbits of local knowledge. And they can look at how many people are interested in this, how many people are reacting to the posts, how many people are liking the page, following the page, and really being able to build a community around this concept, being able to demonstrate that it works, that people are interested in discovering these little bits of local knowledge. It's very easy sometimes as a founder to get really carried away with your idea and believe that the whole world needs it and it's obviously going to be a huge hit before you've demonstrated any of this. Instead, the sort of more careful way of demonstrating interest by looking at signups, gathering those signups, those emails for later use, and building a MVP or a minimal viable product just to test out if the concept works and if people would actually use it in real life. And sometimes you can see that people will guide your product development. For example, on this Facebook page, you've already got people saying, do you have an Apple app or do you have an Android app? And by looking at how many people make these kind of requests, you can see how much interest there is because they actually, got off their own back to write this. So they're clearly interested in something like that if it were available. Now, your MVP will differ depending on what kind of product you have. So usually for a lot of these kind of services or data-orientated kind of products, Facebook page is actually a really, really easy way of doing your MVP. Now, this is another company called the Jamie app, which the concept is very simple. It allows you to meet another professional in the sort of startup adjacent world. They could be designers, product managers, essentially interesting people. And the company sets you up with a 30-minute meeting every Friday morning. And even though they're called the Jamie app, they actually don't have an app. Instead, what they have is an MVP. So at the beginning of every week, the app will send you an email asking for your availability on Friday at 10 a.m. And you can say yes or no. And if you say yes, they'll set you up with a random person to meet. And if you say no, then they leave you alone for the week until next week. It's basically an interesting person that they found for you and allows you to already settle on a date and time that you're both available and then essentially meet up and meet this random person. So instead of jumping down the route of building a really complex app or, putting in a whole bunch of features, this is essentially the core of their product. It's just about setting up two random people to meet once a week. And doing this via just sending emails means that there's no infrastructure, there's no investment, you don't have to build anything, it's just a MVP. By doing this, they've actually gathered, tens of thousands of users and they've demonstrated a real need in this kind of product. So the next step of their product development cycle, I presume, is actually getting a bit of funding and being able to demonstrate that traction using your MVP, being able to show, look at how many weekly users we have, look at how many people we've set up already. This is clearly a need that people have. You're far more likely to get the interest of VCs or angels and people who can help you build this into a real fully fledged product. So before you really jump the gun and, build the product of your dreams, think about what it is that other people want and try to build a core version, a stripped down version of your idea so that it really is just one concept. Very often when we do these large talks and when we do some of the larger courses, you get a lot of people saying, I have an idea that's basically like Facebook meets Snapchat meets Twitter, and I want to launch it in like a week and it's going to be a huge success. Well, that will take quite a lot of building time to make, right? Why not test your idea first, see if people actually want it, build a, really, really stripped down version, and then see how it goes. See what other features people want instead of presuming them. Because no matter how hard you try, you can't really know what the hive mind wants or what it is that, will be a success. So build an MVP. Think about having a product where you have all the features that you possibly want and take out one feature at a time and keep asking people, would you still use this? Would you still use this? Would you still buy this? Would you still buy this? Until you get to the point where you have barely anything in this product and people are still willing to use it or buy it. That is your core product. That is your core concept. And build an MVP around that and then test it out and see how people respond to it. Look at your growth. Look at your traction. Look at how many more signups you're getting every week. Look at how often people are engaging with your product, whether if it's on Facebook, whether if it's through email. It doesn't really matter. Just keep it really, really simple. Now, this is a really good story. There's a company called Gimlet that essentially makes these really great podcasts about startups, about the tech community, etc. And they have a whole bunch of really, really good episodes. One that I would highly recommend is a hour-long interview with some of the previous employees of Grooveshark, which was this music streaming service. And it's kind of a really sad story about how Grooveshark was run and how it eventually died. But the sort of debrief and analysis is really, really interesting, and I'll link it in the video below. But another thing I'm going to link is on their episode where they built a minimum viable product, which is just I think it was like a 5-minute video showing a prototype. So it's not a real app, like you can't download it. It's just a bunch of images that's narrated with a voice. And they showed this video to a bunch of listeners of their podcast to see how many people would want these features, which features they wanted. And they had this Google form at the end surveying essentially, what do you think is good? What kind of features do you want in this app? Is an app even necessary? That's always the questions you should actually ask yourself before you build any app. Should I be making an app? Can it be a website? Can it be simpler? But essentially they use this survey to gather feedback on their minimum viable product. And it's a really good story or description on how the whole process works. And I would highly recommend, if you have a few minutes to spare, have a listen to that.